It is 2 in the morning, and you are sitting alone in a quiet room, trying to understand how your life changed so quickly. You pick up your phone, you scroll through the names, and then you put it back down because you cannot think of a single person you feel safe enough to call. A life crisis is difficult under any circumstances, but when there is no trusted friend nearby, no supportive family member, and no familiar voice saying, "We will figure this out," the crisis can begin to feel larger than your ability to survive it. You may be dealing with the end of a relationship, the loss of a job, a financial setback, a painful family conflict, a health concern, or the frightening realization that the life you built no longer feels like your own. And perhaps the hardest part is not only what happened, it is having to carry the emotional weight of it in silence. Before we continue, consider subscribing to A Friend to Heal With. This channel is a place for the conversations many adults have nowhere else to bring. And tell us in the comments what city, state, or country you're watching from. Sometimes the first reminder that you are not completely alone is seeing how many people in places you have never visited understand what you're feeling. At 48, Marcus had become the person everyone else depended on. His co-workers called when something went wrong. His adult daughter called when she needed advice. His mother called when she needed help with an appointment. Even his former wife occasionally contacted him when there was a problem only he seemed able to solve. Marcus had spent years being useful. Then the company he had worked for since his early 30s eliminated his position. The news arrived in a short meeting on a Wednesday morning. By noon, his access card no longer worked. By evening, he was sitting in his car outside a grocery store, unable to remember what he had gone there to buy. He avoided calling his daughter, not wanting to worry her. He kept the news from his mother, knowing it would frighten her. He said nothing to his former colleagues, afraid shame would change how they saw him. For the first time in many years, Marcus needed someone else to be strong for him. But he had built a life in which he was always the strong one. Many adults discover this painful imbalance during a crisis. They have people in their lives, but they do not necessarily have people they can lean on. They may be surrounded by acquaintances, relatives, co-workers, or online contacts, yet still feel emotionally unaccompanied. You may recognize this experience. Perhaps you're the person who listens but rarely feels listened to. You solve problems but hide your own. You learn to say, "I am fine," so convincingly that people eventually stopped asking whether it was true. Then a crisis arrives, and the emotional system you used for years suddenly becomes impossible to maintain. Small decisions become exhausting. Sleep becomes irregular. Ordinary tasks feel strangely heavy. Your thoughts move between fear about the future and regret about the past. You may even become angry with yourself for not handling the situation better. But a life crisis is not an ordinary problem. It disrupts your sense of stability, identity, and direction. It can make you question not only what to do next, but who you are now. And when there is no one beside you to help hold that uncertainty, your mind may begin doing something that makes the crisis even more difficult. It may treat your isolation as proof that you are entirely on your own. That belief is where the crisis often becomes deeper than the event itself. Human beings do not process distress through logic alone. When something threatens our safety, identity, relationships, or future, the nervous system can move into a protective state. You may become restless and unable to stop thinking. You may feel emotionally numb. You may avoid opening emails, answering calls, or making decisions because every new demand feels like one more thing you cannot carry. These reactions do not mean you are incapable. They may be your mind and body trying to protect you from becoming even more overwhelmed. Support from another person can sometimes help regulate that distress. A calm voice, a patient listener, or someone simply sitting beside us can remind the nervous system that danger is not everywhere. Without that presence, the mind can stay on high alert. A delayed response begins to feel like rejection. One uncertain week begins to feel like a ruined future. A single painful event becomes evidence that nothing will ever be stable again. This is sometimes called catastrophic thinking. It means the mind takes a real difficulty and rapidly extends it into the worst possible conclusion. I lost my job becomes, I will lose everything. My relationship ended becomes, no one will ever love me again. I do not know what to do becomes, there is no way forward. The first statement describes a painful reality. The second predicts an entire future from the most frightened moment of the present. When no one is available to offer perspective, those predictions can begin to sound like facts. There is also another kind of loss hidden inside many life crises, the loss of the person you believed you were. A career crisis can threaten the identity of being competent and established. A divorce can threaten the identity of being chosen and secure. A financial setback can threaten the identity of being responsible. A family rupture can threaten the identity of being someone who keeps everyone together. This is why advice such as just focus on the solution often feels insufficient. You're not only solving a practical problem, you may also be grieving an identity, a future, or a sense of belonging. Take a moment and consider this. What exactly has this crisis taken from you? Was it security? Trust? Direction? A relationship? A role you were proud of? The future you expected to have? Naming the deeper loss does not immediately fix it, but it turns a vague emotional storm into something you can begin to understand. Still, understanding the pain is not enough if an old survival pattern keeps pushing you further into isolation. And that pattern often begins with the belief that needing support is itself a failure. Some people become highly independent because independence once protected them. Perhaps your needs were dismissed when you were younger. Perhaps asking for help led to disappointment, criticism, or a reminder of everything someone had done for you. Maybe you grew up in a family where feelings were treated as weakness, or perhaps life repeatedly showed you that depending on others was risky. So you adapted. You learned to prepare for everything, solve your own problems, hide your fear, and avoid becoming a burden. That strategy may have helped you survive difficult periods. It may have made you responsible, capable, and dependable. But a form of protection can become a prison when it no longer allows anyone to reach you. During a crisis, extreme self-reliance can create a painful cycle. You feel overwhelmed, but you hide it. Because you hide it, others assume you're managing. Because they assume you are managing, they do not offer help. Their silence then seems to confirm that nobody cares. The loneliness becomes evidence for a conclusion that your own protective behavior helped create. This does not mean the isolation is your fault. It means the pattern deserves to be understood without shame. Marcus experienced this after losing his job. For several weeks, he told everyone he was taking some time to think. He joked about finally having a break. He answered practical questions and quickly changed the subject whenever someone asked how he was feeling. People believed the version of him he presented. One afternoon, a former coworker invited him to lunch. Marcus almost declined because he did not want to explain himself. But exhaustion made pretending feel harder than telling the truth. During the meal, he finally said, "I do not need you to fix anything. I just need to admit that I am scared." That sentence did not restore his job, It did not solve his financial concerns, but it interrupted the isolation. His coworker did not give a speech. He simply listened, asked a few thoughtful questions, and later connected Marcus with someone in another company. Support often begins this way, not with complete rescue, but with one honest moment that creates one new possibility. If you have been carrying a crisis quietly, you do not have to reveal everything to everyone. Start by identifying the safest available person, not the perfect person. It might be an old friend you have not spoken to recently, a relative who has shown compassion before, a former coworker, a neighbor, a faith community leader, a support group, a counselor, or a trained helpline volunteer. You can also make the request smaller and clearer. Instead of saying, "I need help with my entire life," you might say, "I am going through a difficult time. Could you listen for 10 minutes?" Or, "I do not need advice yet. I just do not want to be alone with this tonight." Or, "Could you help me think through one decision?" Specific requests are often easier for another person to understand and easier for you to make. And when someone cannot offer what you need, try not to treat their limitation as proof that your need is unreasonable. The wrong source of support does not make support itself impossible. If this chapter is describing something you have struggled to explain, consider subscribing to the channel or sharing this video with someone who is always expected to be strong. You can also leave the words, "learning to reach out," in the comments. You do not need to tell your whole story to acknowledge that you are trying. But what can you do when there truly is no trusted person available right now? That is when you begin building support from the ground up, while also learning how to become a steadier companion to yourself. Overcoming a life crisis does not require you to solve your entire future today. The first goal is to reduce the emotional chaos enough to see the next reachable step. Begin by separating the crisis into 3 categories: what needs attention now, what can wait, and what is outside your control. You do not need an elaborate system. Write the 3 categories on a page. Under Now, include only the issues that truly require action within the next few days. This might be making a necessary phone call, attending an appointment, paying an urgent bill, gathering information, or arranging a safe place to stay. Under Later, place important concerns that are not immediate. Under Outside my control, write the reactions of other people, past decisions that cannot be changed, and outcomes that are not yet known. This exercise can help because a frightened mind often treats every problem as immediate. Separating them reduces the number of emergencies you're trying to solve at once. Next, create what might be called a minimum stabilizing routine. During a crisis, do not build a schedule for your ideal life. Build one for your current capacity. Choose a consistent time to get out of bed. Eat something simple at regular intervals. Take a short walk or sit outside for a few minutes. Set one period during the day for practical tasks and another for rest. These actions are not a cure for emotional pain. They create small points of predictability when the rest of life feels uncertain. You can also contain rumination by giving it a boundary. Rumination is the repetitive thinking that feels like problem solving, but rarely produces a new answer. The mind reviews the same conversation, imagines the same disaster, or asks the same unanswerable question for hours. Try setting aside 15 minutes to write down everything your mind is repeating. Then ask, is there an action hidden inside this thought? If there is, identify the smallest action. If there is not, write, this is a fear, not a task. That distinction matters. Tasks can be scheduled. Fears need compassion, perspective, and sometimes professional support. They cannot always be solved by thinking harder. Then begin creating contact through structure. When personal relationships are limited, structured communities can provide an important beginning. Support groups, community classes, volunteering, faith communities, professional associations, grief groups, and counseling spaces create repeated contact around a shared purpose. The goal is not to force instant intimacy. The goal is to stop requiring every connection to begin with a deeply personal conversation. Trust often grows through repeated, ordinary contact. You see the same person each week. You exchange a few words. You learn a name. Someone notices when you are absent. Over time, a network begins where there was once only silence. And please remember this: seeking professional support does not mean your situation is too dramatic or that you have failed to cope. A qualified mental health professional can offer a private, consistent place to sort through the crisis, especially when your personal support system is limited. If your crisis includes thoughts of harming yourself, an inability to remain safe, violence, abuse, or immediate danger, contact emergency services or a crisis service in your area. You deserve direct, immediate support during a situation like that. Stability may begin with practical actions, but rebuilding a life requires something more than returning to the way things were. It requires deciding what you want to carry forward and what this crisis may be asking you to leave behind. A crisis can divide life into two parts: the life before it happened and the life after. At first, you may want only to get back to who you were before. You want your confidence back, your routine back, your relationship back, your certainty back. That desire is understandable, but sometimes the person you were before the crisis was already exhausted. Perhaps you were living according to expectations you had outgrown. Perhaps you were maintaining relationships in which you could be useful but not vulnerable. Perhaps you had built an identity around never needing anything. Rebuilding does not always mean restoring the old structure. Sometimes it means creating a life in which you are allowed to exist as a full person, not only as someone who performs, provides, solves, or survives. One way to begin is to choose a value you want to practice, even before you feel confident again. A value is not a goal you complete. It is a quality you want your actions to reflect. If honesty matters to you, the next step might be telling one person that you're having a difficult week. If connection matters, it might be attending one group or contacting someone you have avoided because too much time has passed. If self-respect matters, it might be setting a limit with someone who only contacts you when they need something. And if courage matters, it might be making an appointment you have postponed. The action may be small, but it helps restore a sense of agency. It reminds you that the crisis can affect your circumstances without making every decision for you. You can also begin changing the way you speak to yourself during difficult moments. Instead of asking, "Why am I not stronger?" try asking, "What would make the next hour more manageable?" Instead of saying, "I should have figured this out by now," try saying, "I am learning how to live through something I did not expect." Self-compassion is not pretending that everything is okay. It is refusing to become another source of cruelty while you are already in pain. There will still be difficult days. You may take a step forward and then feel overwhelmed again. A new connection may disappoint you. A plan may need to change. Progress during a crisis is rarely a straight line. But each time you tell the truth, ask for appropriate help, complete one necessary task, or choose not to abandon yourself, you're rebuilding trust with your own life. Before we close, share one small step you are willing to take in the comments. It might be, make the call, attend the meeting, tell the truth, leave the house, or simply get through today. Your words may give someone else a starting point when they cannot find one of their own. And share this video with a person who may be carrying more than they have been able to say. You may not have the support system you need yet, but not yet is different from never. And that difference is where rebuilding begins. When there is no one to turn to, the silence can make you believe that your life has reached a dead end. But a crisis is not always the end of the road. Sometimes it is the place where the road you were following disappears, and you must begin creating a new one without being able to see very far ahead. You do not need to see the whole path. You need enough light for one honest conversation, one necessary decision, one safe place, 1 hour in which you treat yourself like someone worth protecting. You may have learned to survive by carrying everything alone. That strength brought you this far. But the next part of your life may require a different kind of strength. The courage to become visible, to accept imperfect support, and to build connections slowly rather than waiting for someone to arrive and rescue you. Your life crisis may have taken away certainty. It may have changed relationships, plans, and parts of your identity. But it has not taken away your ability to make one meaningful choice from where you are now. And sometimes, that is how a life begins to open again. Not all at once, but through the quiet decision to remain beside yourself until you find others who are willing to stand there too. Take gentle care of yourself. You were never meant to carry every difficult season alone.